Homosexuality is not an issue for the Catholic Church in a political or cultural sense. It's a lived reality in the lives of individual people, and this is the way I think Catholics want to first approach it.
Finding a priest who is compassionate, kind, and committed to the truth. I mean, it's such a blessing to find that.
I think we need to fight hard in our churches to provide clear and powerful places for purity and transformation.
Let's be honest. Many same-sex attracted men and women have come to believe that they must act upon their sexual desires to experience a life of joy, friendship, and fulfillment. I could tell you, and as you've seen through the stories of people you've met in previous programs, that's simply not true. Yes, sexuality is a big part of our life for all of us. The Catechism tells us that sexuality affects all aspects of each person in the unity of our body and soul. Our sexuality is a part of our divine design. But our sexuality also has a purpose beyond our immediate desires, which means we don't have to always act on our feelings. True joy flows from mastering our desires and fulfilling them in a way that's in harmony with our nature. This is the work of the virtues, and in this case, the virtue of chastity.
In 1975, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith released their declaration on certain questions concerning sexual ethics. In it, they wrote, "Everyone should have a high esteem for the virtue of chastity, its beauty, and its power of attraction. This virtue increases the human person's dignity and enables him to love truly, disinterestedly, unselfishly, and with respect for others. Whether married or single, the Catholic Church calls upon all people to live chaste lives. Chastity means more than simply abstaining from sex. It involves the successful integration of sexuality within the person, and thus the inner unity of man in his bodily and spiritual being. Chastity, as a virtue, helps us overcome lust and other disordered desires, so that our sexual yearnings are in harmony with God's will. Chastity, then, helps to maintain our relationships with each other in purity, and our relationship with God in worship and charity."
Many people, myself included, have sometimes felt condemned or at least misunderstood by the Catholic Church and by other people. The reality of the Church's teaching on homosexuality is really quite different. The Church reassures us that first and foremost, we are beloved children of God, men and women in Christ. That is our identity, our most important identity. Like anyone else, we need support from others and the grace that is offered by our Redeemer through the sacraments to help live out the fullness of the gospel. The fullness of the gospel is a share in our Lord's joy. That is the great invitation.
Come to the church. Come to the church with all your baggage. Come to the church with all your attractions. And come to the church open to the grace and mercy of Jesus Christ, who is constantly calling us to a conversion of heart. All of us, not just you who have a same-sex attraction, all of us. He's calling us to renewal, conversion of life, repentance, constantly trying our best to cooperate with His grace.
This invitation is more than simply a call to a chaste life. The Church invites us to participate fully in all that God wants to do in us and in others through us.
They had an adult catechism group that I started attending, and I would tell my friends about that, and my gay friends about that, and they thought they were I told them in a very happy, full of joy, and they could appreciate the emotional part, but it ended up being I think they just thought it was a little strange. But at the same time, I remember this deep joy that I felt.
Anyone with same-sex attraction, or any other issue for that matter, wants more than anything else to find encouragement, understanding, and direction For the Catholic, a parish priest can fill this critical role. It's intimidating to meet with a member of the clergy or walk into the confessional and reveal this part of our life. There is always a fear that we might encounter condemnation or, at the other end of the spectrum, misplaced compassion, that what I'm doing or tempted to do is okay. What we really need is someone who is willing, as St. Paul says, to speak the truth in love, letting us know that chastity is a part of the good news and that it's possible to live.
Finding a priest who is compassionate, kind, and committed to the truth. I mean, it's such a blessing to find that, because there are often priests who they're so desirous of being compassionate and loving and accepting that maybe they won't tell people the whole truth about what the church really teaches.
You know, everybody's made in the image of God, so that's the way I try to treat everybody as an image of God.
Made in the image of God. To be told by a priest that, despite my same-sex desires, I'm created in the image of God, puts me on a new journey, a journey toward discovering my real identity, that I'm not merely defined by what I do. But sometimes a priest can try to make us feel good about ourselves rather than telling us the truth and encouraging us that there can be more, much more to life.
We have to deal with the reality that in our society, having discussions about homosexuality from the point of view of whether or not it's good for a person and whether or not a person can not act on a homosexual desire, it's hugely politically incorrect. You know, there's a huge amount of defensiveness.
I think that it's more of a situation that it's not that the priest doesn't agree with the church's teaching, but is so moved by the struggle and the suffering of the individual who is trying to deal with this in their life in a very real way, that their heart kind of overshadows or overpowers what they know in their mind is true.
And in order to talk to somebody who's struggling with their same-sex attraction and to talk about the church's teaching, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes knowledge.
Encouragement and consent may feel like the right thing to do when someone shares his or her attraction to the same sex. Most of us want to make the other person feel okay about their behaviors. But if these actions put us at cross purposes with ourselves, with our natural design, this needs to be told to us. If it's not, we call this misplaced compassion. It's not going to really help us, and honestly, it sets us off course.
The most compassionate thing that a priest can do is to speak the truth with love and to say, all right, you can't go back to that, and there are things that we can talk about to start out, you know, with some perspective on how not to go back to that. And here's some information about courage, which can support you if you're going to make that decision. You know,
priests need to tell men, and I presume women too, indeed, that they are not doomed to continue doing what they're doing. If the priest is to help them, he's to tell them things that they can do.
For most of us who experience same-sex attraction, the journey back into the church and into the love of God begins with leaving a life where we are satisfying the desires of the flesh, where we are sexually active or entertaining a fantasy life. So the sacrament of penance is a starting place, not only for a life of chastity, but also for a life of charity, where our love for God, others, and self can take root.
I think it's reassuring when we go to confession to hear the priest confirm that what we believe is wrong is in fact wrong, and then tell us that God's grace is even still at work, having brought us to the confessional in that moment, and now a deeper conversion of heart is about to begin. That's a very refreshing message. But I think from the pastoral standpoint of the church, we have to be careful that we separate the behavior from the person, lest that message be heard as, you are the people who are destroying society. It is your life that is repugnant. That's not the message of the gospel.
No one is ever outside the reach of God's grace. That is a liberating idea for anyone who is seeking help from Christ and His church. This is the message of hope that needs to come to those who experience same-sex attraction and desire to lead a fuller, richer, and more Christ-centered life. The Catholic in the pew can make a positive difference in the lives of people with same-sex attraction. Building a bond often begins the same way as you would with anyone else in the church, with a simple hello. It goes a long way. It's a great start. These personal connections are vital for all of us.
The person in the pew doesn't realize that really struggle that really touches the core of the person, and how difficult it is, and how much these guys and gals need Jesus. They need His teaching. They need the Eucharist.
And it's not enough just to say, well, just go to the priest or just go to this one authority. I think this is possibly where the raising up of the laity, the equipping of the saints to do the work of the ministry is so crucial. And I know that, Christians who gather in a parish have varying degrees of commitment, and those not very committed probably wouldn't want much to do with that. But those who are serious, those who are seeking, they deserve to have an opportunity to be a part of a community of people who are experiencing that commitment as well, and also the conflict with the culture in walking it out. And so our genuine solidarity with Christian brothers and sisters who are seeking chastity and, I dare say, transformation. We need each other.
But homosexuality is not an issue for the Catholic Church in a political or cultural sense. It's a lived reality in the lives of individual people, and this is the way I think Catholics want to first approach it. It is something that many of our brothers and sisters wake up with each morning and have to try to find a way forward according to the way that Christ proposes that we should live. And as a Christian community, we need to first understand what the Church teaches and why, and how it is something that is liberating and fulfilling, even if it's very difficult. And that's what we need to bring to our conversations and our personal relationships with those who come to us.
I think we need to fight hard in our churches to provide clear and powerful places for purity and transformation. But we also have a responsibility to the greater culture and those that wouldn't naturally go through those doors into our parishes. And I think that is our challenge, is how to take the truth that is clearly the time-honored wisdom of the Catholic Church and to appropriate that to the culture in a way that's compassionate, that will be derided as small-minded and cruel, but is anything but.
Because they don't feel loved oftentimes, and that's part of the problem, that they don't feel loved by those who should be loving them. They feel like they're being judged, they feel like they're being hated. We have to do all we can to make the person in question that we're talking about, whether it be a son or a daughter or niece or nephew, friend, that we really love them. That there's no doubt in their mind, in their heart, that I love them. They don't question that. And we do that in very personal, kind of hidden ways. A note, a phone call, over and over, repeating it. I love you, I love you, I love you. At the same time, letting them know that I can't accept how you live, And to hold those two in balance, not letting one kind of overshadow the other. I love you, I love you, I love you. But I cannot accept the way you live.
Many years ago, His Eminence Terence Cardinal Cook of New York understood how important it was to get an authentic message of love to individuals in the homosexual culture. He was concerned that many would not find this path and would be constantly trying to get their needs met in ways that ultimately do not satisfy the desires of the heart. It was out of his conviction, along with the labor and sacrifice of one of his priests, Father John Harvey, that the Courage Apostolate was born in September of 1980.
You know the story. Father Harvey founded it. And he was just an intensely pastoral, spiritual man who in his own ministry, in the confessional and his dealing with people, met a lot of people with same-sex attraction who said, look, we want to live a virtuous life. We want to live as a faithful disciple of Jesus Christ, and we need help, like we all do when we're in pursuit of virtue. But we need kind of unique help because we do find ourselves with this same-sex attraction. And what can you do for us? And that's the genius, that's the genesis of the Courage Apostolate. It's more important than ever.
Courage is about helping support people to live according to the church's teachings because they have a desire for it. And that's the other thing. Courage didn't go out and get people, met them in a gay bar, put something in their drink, and all of a sudden they woke up and they're in a Courage meeting. That's not what happened. People came to Courage because they had a desire to change. They had a desire not to change orientation, but to change and to follow the church's teachings, which is about living a chaste life, not about getting rid of your same-sex attraction. That's not what it's about.
Chastity is freedom. It's not just what I'm not doing. It's not just about celibacy or abstaining from sex. It's more than that. The virtue of chastity helps maintain the God-given order that's written upon our hearts. This is what leads to lasting, fulfilling relationships. It leads to a sense of peace. It's a journey, it's a process where we move from a sort of white-knuckled chastity to, by God's grace, chastity of the heart. In the Courage Apostolate, this is how we strive to live this out. These are our goals. First goal, living a life of chastity, the virtue of chastity. Next, dedicating our lives to Christ through service to others and spiritual formation. Third goal, maintaining godly fellowship. Fourth, with this fellowship, we need support, which comes through chaste friendships, encouraging each other on our journey through life. Fifth and final goal, serving as a good example and role model for others to follow.
This is all part of a spiritual plan. Summarize it, to develop a life of interior prayer with Christ. I say interior prayer, that in your heart, in your mind, your heart, you have a life prayer going on with Christ. I don't mean praying every moment, but early in the morning or in the evening. So that when temptation hits you, you have something to rely upon, to fall back upon.
What I'm always so thrilled to see when people kind of make their first contact with Courage and they realize I'm making friendships and I'm forming that are not based on sex, that are not based on how I look or whether this person is attracted to me or what this person is trying to get from me or what I'm trying to get from him, but that are genuine and real. And it's you can almost visibly see the burden lift, as people say, there's more to relationships than what I've seen before. There's this whole level of love that's real and true and genuine and doesn't matter. It's not based on how I look or what I'm willing to do.
With the endorsement of the Holy See, Courage now has more than 100 chapters and is in contact with people worldwide. Each week, men and women with same-sex attraction attend Courage meetings to share their concerns and struggles, receive support, and encourage one another in a safe and confidential place.
My experience in going to Courage meetings for these 13 years is that many guys not only have different experiences before they get to Courage, but they have different experiences after they get to Courage, too.
I think it's been huge to have a place to go to where you can speak honestly about what you're going through.
So typically a Courage meeting happens at least once a month, hopefully once every week or 2 weeks if that's possible. The members of a local group meet together with the Courage chaplain who's been appointed by the bishop of the diocese. We meet in a location that is able to provide some support and anonymity for our members. Some of our members have had some hostility from friends that they've made before. There are people in the homosexual community who are not supportive of what Courage is trying to do. So on the one hand, we protect their anonymity for that reason. Also, in some cases, there's very few people that know that a person is dealing with SSA, and they haven't told their friends or their family members, and so they're very conscious of their anonymity as well. When we gather, we always start with prayer, and in many cases, the chaplain will make the sacrament of reconciliation available by offering confessions either before the meeting begins or after the meeting ends. So after our initial prayers, we always start by reminding ourselves of why we're there. So a member around the table will read the 5 goals of Courage that were drafted by that original Courage group. So many times people don't feel a conscious control over how homosexual attractions and feelings affect their lives. It's a process of handing that over to the Lord and with His grace, changing the things about our behavior that are possible to change. Once we've done that, there's usually a chance to just kind of share with the group what's going on. In our group, we call it checking in. We go around the table and we just invite each member for 2 or 3 minutes to just say where they're at. I'm coming tonight with joy because I had this experience in my family this week, or I'm coming tonight a little apprehensive because I've been dealing with a lot of temptations, or I'm coming with mixed feelings because it was a rough week in terms of trying to live chastity, but I was able to go to confession. So all sorts of things, just being honest as friends about where we're coming from and how we're feeling.
For me personally, what I find is hearing about other people sharing and hear about people's, whether their struggles and their joys, is that you really see sort of the cycle of life, and sort of the cycle of the spiritual life, and how people go in their ups and downs, and you see some of them changing. But hearing them being open and honest, it helps me feel more comfortable to share myself, whether my struggles, my falls, my hopes, my joys, successes, things like that.
I think the biggest benefit of Courage to me is just meeting other people who share the same, like a lot of the same struggles. And I think that, especially in today's world, it's really rare for not only people to be really serious Catholics, to be really serious about their faith, but also to have this issue as well, and to really want to pursue chastity in it, and just to live pure lives in accordance with God's will.
The chaplain will address the members of the group, either about something that came up in the checking in, or about one of the steps, or one of the goals, or a spiritual topic. Sometimes it goes with the season of the year, especially at times like Lent and Advent, when we're preparing our hearts to receive the Lord. And then the rest of the meeting time, which generally goes about an hour and a half total, the rest of the meeting time is for open discussion about what the chaplain has talked about, or something that someone checked in with, or one of the steps, or some other thing.
It just made a huge difference for me to have that support. It certainly didn't mean I wasn't going to struggle or have temptations again, but it meant that I had a place to go. I had people I could talk to who understood what I was going through in terms of my attractions, my feelings, but who also shared my faith and knew that was important.
I also find with Courage is it's not specifically always around same-sex attraction. My spiritual life is not just focused on whether you masturbated or not, or whether you've had a fool around with another man or whatever. Some of it could be learn to be more charitable, learn to be more merciful, learn the word what compassion means. Try to be less selfish and self-centered.
And I think for me, that's what Courage does for me. I don't really feel the need to go out there and announce to the rest of the world, hi, I'm Tina and I have same-sex attractions, But when it becomes an issue for me in terms of what I'm going through, I am very grateful for confidential group support and spiritual direction.
So I will sometimes go to the meetings reluctantly. You know, if it's after work time, I go, I'm so tired. Oh, there's 8 people here now, so we have 8 sharing, you know, and oh gosh, am I going to make it? But I tell you, by the time I get there and we're involved in the meeting, I feel at home. And that, I think, is very important, that I feel at home there.
It's been a great experience because I knew I was at the right place. Even though I had some pitfalls along the way, at least I knew that I was with people who understood my struggles, and people were always there to help me. And it was because of courage that brought me to a very peaceful place in my life where I was able to say, you know what, I really don't want this anymore. Finally, I felt free after 22 years of struggling, and finally felt that I'm a place now in my life where, you know, I could say I'm honestly at peace.
We hope these 5 programs have given you a much deeper and richer understanding of this very important subject. This is not simply an abstract issue. It is a very personal and private reality that affects persons at their deepest levels of life. For those who, like me, live with same-sex attraction, the how we got this way is not as important as how we can find joy and fulfillment in life. Chastity is indeed part of the good news. Our faith and our church play a critical role in directing and guiding us on our faith journey.
Courage is a Roman Catholic apostolate helping men and women experiencing same-sex attractions to achieve peace of mind and heart and authentic relationships with God, themselves, and others. Support, resources, and people who care are available at couragerc.org and by calling 203-803-1564.